One of those frightening moments in Times Square this evening. You see there on your screen crowds running for safety after hearing what they thought was an explosion. It turns out it was all connected to a manhole that caught fire.
Jessica, behind me, 43rd is closed between 7th and 8th Avenue. Fortunately, no one was injured. Con Ed crews remain on the scene, but there was a great deal of confusion and concern earlier as crowds of people heard the explosion. This EarthCam video shows the moment people began scrambling out of the area. The chaos unfolded just before 7 p.m.
What is it?
Con Ed says a power cable failure led to an explosion and fire in a manhole. As firefighters worked to put out the fire, dark gray smoke came from that manhole and two others filling the air.
Once I seen the fire, the cops started telling me to back up. I slowly started backing up, but still, I started, then again, I started proceeding, to the fire, and then it actually exploded right in front of me, and that's when I just, I started running.
Maravik Jack says she is visiting from California and was running late to catch her tour bus when she heard the boom.
We just missed it. We missed the bus, and it's just like 5 minutes of walking, and that's when the big, loud. I mean, I'm still kind of nervous and shaking.
Firefighters evacuated people in the area as a precaution. Officials say there were elevated carbon monoxide levels at an office building at 229 West 43rd Street. Tonight, Con Ed says there have been no power outages as a result of the fire.
So we just got manholes exploding with no apparent reason.
Many reported hearing loud booms last night as they rushed to safety.
EarthCam video here shows people scrambling for safety around 7 o'clock yesterday evening.
What is it?
Con Ed says a power cable failure led to an explosion and fire in a manhole. As firefighters worked to put out the fire, dark gray smoke came from that manhole and two others filling the air. So the cause of what ultimately triggered this is still being looked into, but officials say there are no injuries and power outages to report as a result of this fire.
So since there were no injuries, they feel like they don't need to tell us the cause of these explosions underground. It's just so weird that there were explosions, but there's no power outages. What are these explosions coming from? Methane gas? Or is it something else? And then just a day later, in the same vicinity basically, we have a mass shooting on the subway during rush hour. Let's take a look.
I was taking my brother to school, and then I was on the R train coming towards Bay Ridge, and then all of a sudden the train came to a sudden stop, and they started evacuating everybody. There was no reason as to why. They just said that the trains were going to stop and there was going to be no more trains passing through the 36th Street train station. And then I was coming up the stairs, I saw and I smelled a lot of smoke. And coming up the stairs, I saw maybe a 16-year-old that was shot in the knee. You can clearly see the bullet in his knee. Then I stood out the train station on the corner of 36th Street and 4th Ave, and that's when I saw two more victims that were injured. They were wounded on their knee and on their thighs.
And how old is your brother?
He's 10.
You take him through that subway station to the school?
Yes.
Right. How was?
Luckily, I had dropped him off already, so I wasn't with him, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty scary moment because there was still a lot of kids, and everybody is going to work at that time to school, so it must have been scary for others that did have their kids. I wasn't there to witness firsthand, but I did see the victims, and it was scary seeing them injured and laying like that.
So off the bat, we got witnesses that didn't see things firsthand, but they're reporting on the mainstream media as witnesses, okay? They saw the after effects, which could very well be crisis actors. Or, who's to say? But like I say, these witnesses weren't there firsthand. And these are the worst witnesses to interview. And when the powers that be, do their whatever they do, they always have the gematria numbers in full effect. Fires in the manhole was on 43rd Street. And now you see here, the train continued to 34th Street. So they just play on these numbers and they're signaling each other, that they're all connected. So I feel like something's about to happen in New York. I'm not sure what, but, something big probably because, 9/11 happened there. Now, the reason I mention crisis actors is because miraculously, all the cameras in this area happen not to be working. Miraculously.
Investigating cameras in the subway. subway system after we learned today that a number of the cameras in the very station where the incident took place, those cameras were not working.
Was it just a simple coincidence or something more sinister? That's what law enforcement officials are trying to find out tonight as the manhunt for the gunman continues.
We know that there were 3 stations that the video wasn't working. We're still investigating that to see why or how.
NYPD Chief of Detective James Essig addressing the question that has hampered cops in finding the man whose early morning shooting spree has New Yorkers on edge. None of the security cameras inside the 36th Street station were transmitting pictures as the train bearing the suspect entered the station. Officials say cameras at the token booth and on the platform might have captured the scene and helped police identify the man. Sources tell CBS 2 the cameras themselves were working. It was the connection that sends the camera feed to both the NYPD and MTA security centers that was apparently on the fritz. But that's not all. Sources tell CBS 2 that cameras at the 2 stops on either side of the 36th Street station, 45th Street and 25th Street, also had the same connection problems. The MTA has approximately 10,000 cameras at its 472 stations. All were operational, except those 3, sources say. MTA Chair Jano Lieber says authorities are looking at the other cameras on the N line, about 600 in all, for clues.
The cops today were looking at cameras up and down the system because they wanted to see where this criminal had entered the system, as well as where he may have left.
And this isn't the only time the MTA has had camera problems. A 2018 audit by State Controller Tom DiNapoli warned that the agency had pervasive problems with preventive maintenance of its camera system. Auditors reviewed 223 cameras at 10 stations and found that 1,328 of the 4,219 expected maintenance visits were simply not done. That's 31%.
We will look into that, but we are sure that we're going to examine the other stations because the camera system is an important part of our anti-violence and terrorist operation as well.
So not only did they change the station to the 36th station, which equals 9, but 3 of the major cameras were out, 3 and 9. They're coding up this whole thing. So it's quite obvious they're lying to us. And it just so happens 3 cameras of the 3 stations they were at were not working. And that guy didn't pre-do it either, no matter what they're going to say, okay? Because the guy already looks like he's a Manchurian candidate.
So we were stuck in the carts. There was blood on the floor. There was a lot of blood trailing on the floor. All I saw were people trampling over each other, trying to get through to the door.
Gives you chills just to see it. Harrowing, heartbreaking video on social media showing the chaos following a mass shooting on a moving New York City subway train. The victims frantically running for their lives once that train stopped. And just moments ago, police say the U-Haul van, believed to be linked to the shooter, has been found, but he is still on the run. Here's what we know tonight. 10 people were shot, at least 6 others injured. The injury total has gone up over the last hour or so. It's about 19 right now. None of the injuries considered life-threatening. Riders say the shooter put on a gas mask, opened up a canister, filled the car with smoke before opening fire. Police believe at some point his gun jammed, perhaps lessening the number of victims in the attack. And while the shooting isn't being investigated as an act of terrorism, New York City police say they're not ruling anything out. Condolences are pouring in, including from our public transit system here in the metro. Again, everyone survived.
So he shot all these people and nobody had a life-sustaining injury? Nobody died? I mean, what kind of gun was he using? Was he using a BB gun? And this is just in time for gun control.
A smoke bomb and shots fired. A Tuesday morning commute turned war zone on the N train.
I just hit. I moved myself out the way.
And tonight, the manhunt intensifies as police name their person of interest, uncovering clues in a U-Haul and on social media.
And there were some postings possibly connected to our person of interest.
Now, new concerns about subway security and what the cameras didn't catch.
You see, now the media is going to try to attempt to tell us what the cameras didn't catch. Like they know what happened. Like they were there.
We are almost 15 hours after the nightmare unfolded underground at the subway station right here behind us. The subway station is still blocked off. And as we're learning more information tonight about the person of interest in the case, we're also learning about the acts of heroism about New Yorkers who were going about their daily lives, a regular day, a regular morning, when the absolutely unimaginable unfolded and burst right before their eyes. Here's a look at where it all began this morning. Just before 8:30, the N train was approaching the 36th Street and 4th Avenue station when the chaos unfolded. And there's a second crime scene that police were focusing on tonight. The U-Haul truck investigators traced back to the person of interest was discovered in Gravesend, Brooklyn. That person of interest identified as Frank James, 62-year-old, who has residences in Wisconsin and in Philadelphia. Police say 10 people were shot this morning, but at least 23 were hurt in the chaos. And it could have been even worse. Sources, police telling us the shooter's gun jammed with bullets still inside.
Police swarmed over a U-Haul van believed to be driven by the gunman, and now they have a person of interest, 62-year-old Frank James from Philadelphia, who rented the van.
We are endeavoring to locate him to determine his connection to the subway shooting, if any.
And police say James is connected to some social media posts that concern the NYPD.
He mentions homelessness, he mentions New York, and he does mention Mayor Adams. And as a result of that, in an abundance of caution, we're going to tighten the mayor's security detail.
It was sheer terror for riders who ran for their lives through the smoke and away from gunfire. A madman in a gas mask unleashed smoke bombs and unloaded 33 shots. Police say the gunman got on the train at the Kings Highway station, and when it was stopped in the tunnel between the 59th and 36th Street stations, he started shooting. Yav Montano was inside the car.
I just hit. I moved myself out the way. There was a lot of blood trailing on the floor. And then, thank goodness, the train moved within a minute, or I don't know what had happened if we were stuck there for longer.
Video from the train shows one rider trying to escape the car with the gunman, but the door between the cars was locked.
Some people were covered in blood on their hands. They had their masks still in their hands and scrapes on their faces. And then I noticed more and more police presence and ambulances.
Looking for male black, carrying a school bag.
Police say the gunman left behind a bag with a hatchet, 2 gas canisters, and a single automatic handgun that apparently jammed, perhaps saving lives.
Dispatch goes on to tell us that they're looking for a black male with a bag. But if he left the bag behind, then they're looking for the wrong person because he didn't have his bag when he was making the getaway.
The attack raises new questions about subway safety, and Mayor Adams doesn't rule out introducing new safeguards, including metal detectors.
We have identified some of that technology, and we're going to make sure we do everything within legal means, but we're also going to protect New Yorkers.
Suddenly, the mayor wants to put metal detectors in the subways, but people have been getting stabbed in the subways for centuries. So they're just now deciding to do this because some madman went crazy with a BB gun? I mean, this makes zero sense.
The suspect is still on the loose, but police just located an unoccupied U-Haul connected to the shooter. There are a lot of questions tonight, more than 10 hours after the shooter deployed a smoke canister and opened fire on an N train about to enter a Brooklyn station. We still don't have a picture of the suspect, but he is described as a heavy-set black male standing approximately 5 feet 5 inches tall. At least 29 people were injured, 10 people who were shot, and 5 are listed in critical but stable condition. Police say other victims suffered smoke inhalation and shrapnel wounds. Cell phone videos showed chaos and confusion as horrified victims ran from the smoke-filled subway car.
Just before 8:30, rush hour riders on a packed Manhattan-bound train were terrorized after a lone gunman first set off a smoke bomb, then started shooting at random.
An individual on that train donned what appeared to be a gas mask. He then took a canister out of his bag and opened it. The train at that time began to fill with smoke. He then opened fire, striking multiple people on the subway and in the platform.
Cell phone video shows horrified riders bolting from the train after it pulled into the station. Passengers dragged some victims to safety, while others limped off on their own. Confusion reigned. First responders soon flooded the South Brooklyn neighborhood, treating victims for smoke inhalation and gunshot and shrapnel wounds. Carcamo was on a different train when he filmed passengers pouring onto the subway platform, looking for help.
I imagine you didn't get a look at this suspect.
No, I didn't see any shooting. I didn't see anyone that was like suspicious. I just saw the aftermath of everyone caught in the violence of it. people trying to get away, people hurt.
Looking for male black, carrying a school bag.
Police and FBI investigators scoured the station, looking for a suspect in a green worker's vest. They recovered a tote bag with a hatchet, 2 gas canisters, and a semi-automatic handgun that apparently jammed during the melee. They also found several undetonated devices and spent ammunition magazines. But they did not find the gunman.
This is not being investigated as an act of terrorism at this time.
Today, President Biden addressed the shooting.
But we're not letting up on it till we find out and we find the perpetrator.
There was also information about people who were shot or injured or suffered from some kind of shrapnel injury or smoke inhalation. From the New York Fire Department, they said they treated 16 people at the site. Then there were people taken to hospital, 10 suffering gunshot wounds, and 5 of those people in critical but stable condition. And some of the other wounds that people were suffering, as I mentioned, shrapnel, smoke inhalation, and in any understandable case, panic as well.
From there, we heard a bit more about the victims. We got an updated number. Earlier, we were hearing 8, possibly 10. Now it's 16 victims, people that were injured, various injuries. But of those 16 victims, we heard that several of them were shot. About 10 of the victims had gunshot wounds. 5 of them are in critical but in stable condition, is what we heard. And of course, aside from those that have the gunshot wounds, there were other injuries that we heard about as well. Earlier, we were talking about smoke inhalation, possibly people being injured in maybe trying to escape what was going on. So again, still an active shooter investigation here. They're still looking for the suspect, and they're asking people to, if they have videos, if they have pictures, if they have any information, to contact them, is what they're saying. And what we heard about, how this all played out, it was around 8:24 in the morning. We heard that this started on the train, that it started on one of the cars, and that this suspect pulled out a gas mask and then a canister, and then there was smoke, and then the shooting began. So that's how it started. But we heard her say that people on the actual train were shot, as well as people on the platform. So a very chaotic situation. We've heard from different witnesses throughout this morning, different perspectives from where they were about what took place. But now we have confirmation, in fact, that this started on the train before spilling over onto the platform.
And that was one of the questions that you and I were, bandying about earlier when we did not have those details, because it seems that there were eyewitnesses who said the train car doors opened and there was smoke, which would lead one to assume it was already on the platform. But, in these times, imagine, what is 8:26 in the morning or 8:24 in the morning like in New York on the N train during rush hour, coming through, people heading to work, people going to school, wherever they may be going. Police are going to have to sift through all of this information, Makta.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's understandable that there would be different accounts, different descriptions of what was happening at that time. It's very possible that from that witness that described the doors opening and seeing smoke, that they may have been on one of the cars that was further back, away from this particular car. I'm not certain if this is a train station that has trains going in opposite directions. It's possible if that's the case, then maybe they were on a train on the opposite side of this platform. A lot can go on in a situation like this. It's people are it's frenzied. There's a lot happening. There are people in different positions taking in what's happening. So you would expect that there could be different accounts of what took place. But
okay, I can't even listen to this lady anymore because I can't take her seriously due to her wig. You got the part all the way on the side. I don't know what's going on with your hair. Where's your hairdresser at? But she keeps just repeating herself. Like, this is what the mainstream does. They don't really know nothing, but they want to be the first to report something on anything.
You was going boom, 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 boom. In an exclusive interview, Fatim Jaloshi showed us his blood-stained shoe from Tuesday's violent subway shooting in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. But it's this bullet hole in his pants that reveals just how close he came to being a victim.
The guy shoots me through the leg over here and over here on the left.
The 20-year-old, filled with fear, says he started telling people to run to the back of the train that was engulfed with smoke. During that time, Jaloshi tells us he used his leg to help people escape.
I had to break the door open. I just went boom, boom, the third time, and it opens up. Thank God we got lucky, and the door opened on us. 1 minute later, the R train came.
On that train was this man, Ray.
I haven't processed a damn thing. I'm exhausted.
Ray tells us he quickly jumped in to help after seeing blood, smoke, and panic.
One of the first things I did was grab a man bleeding out on the floor just to get him out of foot traffic.
Among the people in need, a young passenger who Ray tells us shared an immediate concern.
She's like, yeah, I'm pregnant. I said, what do you mean? She's like, I'm 3 months pregnant. As far as I could tell, none of the blood was hers, but she was covered in it. I think her leg was bothering her in some capacity.
The 28-year-old, who is a photographer, also took out his camera and captured images, pictures that could be helpful in the investigation.
A detective approached me because he saw the camera. You know, he asked if I had anything good, and I said, yeah, hell yeah, you know what I mean? Let's do this thing. He drove me back to the precinct, and I was in the witness room, 10 minutes later, at the 72nd.
2 men who separately stepped up to help New Yorkers in need.
Crazy experience.
I'm home, and, I hugged my mother and told her I loved her. Obviously, I hope everybody that was there can do the same thing.